Welcome back to Birds of a Feather Talk Together. This is Christmas week, so we're not recording, but we did want to leave you with a few things from previous episodes and then an exciting announcement. First is a recording that we did on the Christmas bird count last year. John breaks down exactly what the Christmas bird count is and talks about his different experiences with it. This was super interesting to hear about, and maybe you've already listened to this in a previous episode, but I always like hearing about it again and the important role that it plays in tracking populations of birds across the U.S. Maybe you're new to birding and have heard of Christmas bird count but don't know exactly what it is, like Amanda and I last year, so hopefully this is helpful. After we talk about the Christmas bird count, we revisit a question that we answered on the book The Feather Thief, and then have an exciting announcement that we make after our Feather Thief question. Okay, go grab your binoculars and let's learn about the Christmas bird count.
Yeah, well, it's this annual event that takes place coming on the run up to Christmas and then into just past New Year's every year. And it was started in 1900 in New York City. And Frank Chapman, who was a curator of birds at the American Museum, basically wanted people to think about looking at birds as opposed to just killing them and putting them in hats at the time, which was something that was fairly prevalent. And it's evolved into this event that has thousands and thousands of participants across the U.S., Canada, and into Latin America, going out every year. And a circle is put on a map, and the one stipulation across the country is that circles don't overlap, so they can touch, but they aren't geographically overlapping. And they have a 15-mile diameter or radius. I can never remember which one, 50-mile radius, I think. And what people do is they go into those circles and count every single bird they can during the day. And different counts, of course, are happening in all kinds of different geographies across the U.S. And I've been doing it, I realized, for 50 years since I was a kid growing up in Arizona, where I would do Christmas counts like Nogales, Arizona, where we would literally go through our area on the Nogales Christmas count, which included this count circle crossover into Mexico. And back then there was a barbed wire fence at the border that we could literally go under and go bird in Mexico if we wanted to for a little bit, and then come back and finish up the rest of our area. And it's all about wintering birds, and the way it's done is systematic enough that these data are actually useful to look at population trends of birds from a scientific perspective. So it's one of the first it's the first big example of citizen science in the U.S. birding community, really. And, so the predecessor of eBird and things, and it's a great tradition. And one of the big things to do is there's a compilation at the end of the day on many of the counts where everybody comes in and you get to find out what good birds people found in their area that they didn't expect. And so the count that I went on this year was up in Blanchardville, Wisconsin, which is one that Dave Willard, our retired collection manager, has been doing for over 50 years. He grew up as a young birder in Madison, Wisconsin. And we get together and we divide that circle up into 4 areas, and it's a bunch of farmland west of Madison. And we go out and we count birds. And the temperature this year when we started was 15 degrees, and it got up to about maybe 30 during the course of the day. So it was cold. And yet, there are birds there, and we saw things like pileated woodpeckers, which are resident there. But we also had northern shrikes there. We had birds like tufted titmouse, which is an interesting one because over the years that we've been doing the count, they didn't used to occur in the area, and they've gradually increased their range northward. And so you see all these interesting things associated with trends as you've gotten a chance to do that over time. And so it's a fun event, and there are lots of Christmas counts in the Chicago area, for instance, but anywhere you live, you could find a Christmas count within shouting distance of you that you could potentially go on. And it's run by the National Audubon Society.
Okay.
So this is a question. This is from Zaya from Louisville, Kentucky. And she says, I finished reading The Feather Thief and would highly recommend it. I was looking through the acknowledgments and saw a thank you to Dr. John Bates at the Field Museum in Chicago. Is this the same John Bates that hosts my favorite podcast?
Yes, it is. And it was, that's, we could do a whole show on The Feather Thief, which people should, if you want to read a crazy story,
it's a true story, but it reads completely like a fiction story. You would never think somebody would think of doing what this kid did.
Yes.
Yeah. And just as a quick summary for folks, basically it illustrates issues with respect to maintaining natural history collections and situations where people have other things that they think would be really interesting to do with the birds. And in this case, this was the professional fish flying tying community, competitive fish fly tying community.
Some of those ties are worth tens of thousands of dollars. If you get bird of paradise feathers in it, there's a huge market. Who knew? That's what I had no clue. We've always conceived of someone potentially stealing specimens from our collection. That's why they're locked and why we monitor who's there, and we don't just let anybody go into the collections. But it never would have dawned on me that people were going to steal specimens and turn them into fly ties.
Which is exactly what this kid did at the British Museum in outside London. And when Kirk Johnson, the author of the book, was writing it, he was at the Peabody Museum in Yale, and he was working with the curator there, Rick Prum, and they called me up one day and said, John, we just found a picture of some of your birds on a dark web site related to fish fly tying, and my heart just sunk. And they sent me the picture, and I looked at it, and they were birds that actually weren't very old specimens in our collection, meaning they'd been collected actually by one of our graduate students in Peru. And I just went down to the collection, and I opened the drawers where they were supposed to be, and there they were. And what had happened was a photo from our collection had been posted somewhere on the web, and it was shared on the fish fly tying site, I guess, as sort of, it was some tanagers from South America, and they were just sort of saying, hey, these look really cool. So,
oh gosh,
it's terrifying.
That is terrifying. Yeah.
And that's illegal, people. Don't do that. You can't possess migratory bird parts of North American birds. You can't bring birds from other countries into this country without the right permits. And we do all of that stuff legally. So we get the right permits to do work. We get the right permits from the scientific entities and governments to bring to do what we do, to export them. We get the right permits in the U.S. to import them and to have them. So it's a very time-consuming, detailed process that we go through every year to be able to have the specimens that we have. So,
well, there's lots of chicken feathers in this world, and you can do some pretty amazing things with chicken feathers.
Yeah.
So it's crazy that it's one of the, it's called The Feather Thief, and it's by Kirk Johnson, and it's a pretty amazing story.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. We're really excited to announce that kicking off in 2025, we're going to be doing a little mini-series on The Feather Thief, around 4 or 5 episodes, where we'll break down everything in more detail. And then I think we're going to chat with the author, Kirk Wallace Johnson, to cap it all off. So we're super pumped about that. We're so excited. The book was so incredible. And as curators of birds at the Field Museum in Chicago, John and Shannon are the perfect people to break it all down. From Alfred Russel Wallace's bird collection, some of which are in the Field Museum with John and Shannon, to talking a little bit more about some of the rare birds that were stolen in the book, to the importance of museum collections and the value that they serve to the science community, to the horrific crime committed in the book. There's a lot to unpack, and we're super pumped to dive into it more in a lot more detail. Okay, well, that's it for this week. We hope everyone has a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Reminder, if you have a question, you can reach out to us at podcast.birdsofafeather@gmail.com. All right. See you all next week. Love everyone.